It's really incredible that Android doesn't have any major RPG references, especially when we're talking about offline RPGs. Usually you have to dig pretty deep through the Play Store to find one, but in this video I'm going to show you some of the lesser known ones, and trust me, I searched a lot. So you already know, leave a like and let's get started. I think this game probably has around 500 downloads on the Play Store. Let's talk about a game called PAING 2. One of the most impressive things about it is definitely the open world. In the game, you create your character, choose their class, and then you are placed into the game world. Just like many others on this list, it's a kind of sandbox game. You can choose where to go, what to do, and which quests you want to take. However, to be honest, I didn't really like the combat system that much, but it's the type of game where you can spend a lot of time fighting monsters, exploring the world, or talking to NPCs, and of course creating the strongest character in the entire world. I remember this game's release. It was really impressive because it was one of the only isometric RPGs at the time. Let's talk about Quest Hunter. This is basically a dungeon crawler. You have a character who ends up trapped in a dungeon, and now you need to find a way out. During the game, you'll find several characters where you can also exchange and upgrade your equipment. And of course, there are many enemies for you to defeat as you progress through the game. I remember playing it quite a lot, and from what I remember, it doesn't really have much of a story either. That's because the game is much more focused on its gameplay, as it's the type of endless grind experience that you can keep playing forever. And even though it's quite old, it's still worth giving it a chance. Technically, this is a more generic RPG where you choose one of the 4 classes available and go against your enemies. Let's talk about Rusty Axe. There is something very different about this game that makes it really unique, and that's the ability to switch your character's class at any time. Imagine a game where you have 4 different classes and 4 different characters, and you can switch between them whenever you want. That's basically how this game works. So in the game, there are several different dungeons for you to explore as much as possible. The idea is to level up your character, collect as much money as you can, and of course defeat as many enemies as possible along the way. Soulstone of Life is an RPG from 2015, and the most impressive thing is that you can still play it today. Let's talk about it. I honestly really like these types of RPGs, but the pixel art style is something that should definitely be used more often. You could say that the game's story is pretty generic, where you basically need to save the world from a monster invasion. One thing the game does really well is bringing different NPC characters into your team. So you can say that you're not playing alone, but instead you have another character with you that works kind of like an AI companion. Unlike games from today, this one is much more challenging, and even though it's quite old, it's definitely worth giving it a chance. Definitely the funniest game you're going to see on this list. Let's talk about a game released in 2013 called The Bard's Tale. One of the coolest parts about this game is that you won't be playing as a hero who needs to save the world. Actually, the bard you play as only wants money, women, and as much luxury as he can get. However, during the journey, he will accept several different quests that will eventually turn him into a great hero. The best part is definitely the game's dialogues, so it's really worth reading everything. And for those wondering, yes, it's also an isometric RPG, basically a dungeon RPG, where your goal is to become as rich as possible. A lot of people don't even know this game is available on the Play Store, and it's a game that mixes RPG elements with social features. Let's talk about KITARIA FABLES. This game was originally released on the Switch. It features several different cats and other animals as characters, and it has a simpler story where you basically need to save the world as your warrior cat. However, in this game, you have a house, a family, and a place to return to. And of course, that changes many things, but it doesn't stop the game from being a good RPG. For example, the game also includes farming systems, planting, agriculture, and even taking care of animals. But of course, don't think it's only about that. You still need to defeat enemies and face the greatest villain of them all. Maybe a game that was never finished. I don't really know what happened to this game, but it's worth taking a look at it. Let's talk about Land of Eno. And And well, you could say that this game doesn't really have a story. It just takes your character and places you in a very beautiful world. There are some enemies for you to defeat and some items for you to collect. It's very simple in that aspect, but you can tell that the game was maybe still being developed or perhaps abandoned. I'm not really sure. However, it's one of those games that you can still enjoy despite its limitations. The character progression is pretty cool. The world reminds me a lot of Genshin Impact, and of course one of the best parts is the gameplay. The gameplay is already really good, and it's a shame that this game is so short. This RPG is funny because you basically just need to keep leveling up, but for some reason it's extremely addictive. Let's talk about Level Up RPG. This game reminds me a lot of Ragnarok, especially because of its graphics. However, you can say that it's quite different, especially when it comes to its main idea. You could also say that maybe it's a dungeon crawler, but without the dungeons. You just walk around the map and explore as much as you can. The gameplay is really fun, and your character progression happens very quickly. The maps are very intuitive, showing you where you need to go, and of course the Ragnarok style progression makes the game much more enjoyable and addictive as you try to see how far you can evolve your character. If you've never played Neverwinter Nights, the best way to imagine the game is to think of a classic Dungeons and Dragons RPG mixed with exploration, lots of dialogue, and character progression. So you start by creating your character, choosing between several races such as humans, dwarves, and others, as well as their class, attributes, skills, and abilities. The character creation is very detailed as the game is basically divided into large areas. It doesn't have just one central story, but instead has many different stories involving NPCs. You travel through the map, talking to characters, accepting quests, and exploring caves and castles. The main idea is exactly this exploration where you search for hidden chests, keys, magic items, and many other secrets. This is a very original game, especially because of its Dungeons and Dragons foundation, and a lot of people don't even remember that it's available on the Play Store. If you like games in the style of Diablo where you need to level up your character as much as possible and defeat millions of enemies, you're going to enjoy ONIRO. Without a doubt, this is one of the best offline Diablo style games you can find on the Play Store. The game follows the same formula. You build your character, choose a class for them, and enter dungeons to go as far as you can. The combat works really well. The game has a dark atmosphere and a much more grim style, but what really makes it stand out are the different classes you can choose for your character, and not only that, but equipment, skills, and modifications are all things you can customize. You can do all of this with your character, making it one of the most complete games in this aspect. And it's definitely one of the best choices on this list if you enjoy this style. I really thought this game would become much more popular, especially since it's basically a new port. Let's talk about DROVA, Forsaken Kin. It was released for PC in 2024 and got its Android port in 2026. And honestly, it's the type of game that works really well. It's that kind of extremely complex RPG that you can easily spend over 100 hours playing. Just like some other games on this list, you play as a newly created character who isn't the world's savior. You can choose which path your character will follow, including classes and even the choices you make throughout the journey. The game has multiple endings, a huge map to explore, and it's not linear at all. You can basically decide whatever you want in this world. Now we're talking about a very old game from 2011. Let's talk about an Android legend called Earth and Legend. Even though the game is very old, it has many things that are usually used in games nowadays, like an open world. Not only that, you create your own character and decide exactly which path to follow. The game is basically a sandbox experience. The game has several different islands for you to explore, and you can really choose your own role. You can be the warrior who saves the world, or just a fisherman trying to survive by selling your catches. The cool part is the graphics as well. They really remind you of older games, and that's definitely one of the best parts about it. Maybe one of the most famous games on our list, this game became extremely popular. Let's talk about Epic Conquest. Since we're talking about more offline games available on the Play Store, only the first and second games follow this style, while the third one is much more focused on an online format. Their stories are connected, but you can easily play one or the other without needing to know the entire story. Usually the story involves several monsters, global conspiracies, and of course your character trying to solve everything. Every time I play it, I remember several different games because Epic Conquest has that feeling. It reminds me a bit of Ragnarok, especially with the way you distribute your stats. The combat also reminds me of Zelda, and using skills gives me a little bit of a Mu Online feeling. It's basically a mix of many great games, and that's exactly why it's such a good experience. One of the only games I know that manages to mix dating simulation with RPG and great action. Let's talk about ETERNIGHTS.
Yes.
The game's story is really interesting. You control a character who goes to a dating event to find a girlfriend. When he arrives at the place, our character is suddenly caught in an alien invasion. Surrounded by aliens, he decides to sacrifice himself to save the group, and that's when he ends up getting a special weapon capable of defeating them all. After that, you need to defeat every alien that gets in your way while also controlling several different characters. Among these characters are all the girls you meet during the dates, and you can choose who you want to have a relationship with. But of course, at the same time, there are plenty of aliens for you to defeat. Without a doubt, one of the oldest games on this list because it has been active since 2011. Let's talk about EVOLAND. This game is simply amazing. Its story and even its evolution are the main highlights. The game really reminds you of older Zelda games where you controlled a pixel-style character, solved puzzles, and saved a lot of people. However, this game has a very unique approach. As you progress, it evolves not only graphically but also in terms of gameplay. For example, you start with a black and white character, but you can end the game with a completely 3D character. It can start as an action RPG and later transform into a card game or even a turn-based RPG. Without a doubt, it's one of the most creative RPG experiences of this style. It's really incredible that this game is free because it's unbelievably good. Let's talk about ARCANE Quest Legends 2. In this game, your character is involved in a war, but eventually your character dies. You are then given a second chance by God, basically returning from death to help resolve several different conflicts. From this point on, your goal is to go into battles and end these wars your own way. One really cool part is that these wars take place in several different areas. There are even maps set in modern times and others based on older periods like medieval wars, for example. Another cool thing is that you can summon your army, upgrade your character, and overall it's a very complete RPG experience. Well, you can tell that this game isn't from a big company, but even so, it ends up taking 4 GB of storage, which is impressive. Let's talk about Ashes of Paradise. The most impressive thing about this game is that it doesn't have many enemies for you to defeat. If I'm not mistaken, there was a game like this called Titan Quest. Basically, you will only find 1 or 2 enemies or NPCs to interact with and even defeat, but the game is mostly focused on bosses. In this game, almost all the time, you'll encounter a different giant boss to take down, and the coolest part is its responsive combat system. It really reminds me of a Souls-like game, maybe one of the only ones like this available on the Play Store. A game that you won't find on the Play Store, but it's an RPG that is definitely worth looking for elsewhere. Let's talk about CrossCode Mobile. In this game, you play as a character who ends up trapped inside an MMORPG and now needs to find a way to escape from that place. Unlike many others on this list, this one has a really good combat system where you need to think carefully before using your abilities. And speaking of abilities, the one you're seeing here is one of the main mechanics of the game. You'll use it for almost everything, and believe me, it's much more important than it seems. Besides that, the story is really good. Inside the MMORPG you are playing, you meet other characters and eventually need to decide whether you will stay there or return to your own world. Dark Sword: The Light of AIIN is an indie action RPG that mixes elements of hack and slash, bullet hell, Souls-like, and Metroidvania in a dark world with pixel art graphics, and let's talk about it now. In the game, you control a warrior who wields the Great Holy Sword, exploring forbidden lands in search of guardians left behind by the king. The combat is definitely the main highlight. Besides the close-range combat, enemies fire huge amounts of projectiles that feel very similar to a roguelike. In this game, you'll need to pay attention to basically everything and of course keep attacking with your character. I put it on this list because the map is relatively open, it has several secret items, character upgrades, different classes, and it manages to be a great hidden gem. We've already talked about games similar to Diablo here, but did you know that there is an actual original Diablo available on the Play Store? Well, its name there is DEVILUTION X. For those who have ever wondered why they don't make ports of older games for Android, this is basically one of them. Someone took the original Diablo, the famous PlayStation 1 game, and released a port. The cool part is that it has a perfect rating. If you've ever downloaded an emulator, you know that this Diablo is dark and quite challenging, but they managed to make this version work really well. And in the game, you have your character, you need to enter dungeons, defeat as many enemies as possible, and of course eventually defeat Diablo himself at the end. It's basically the same experience as the other Diablo games, but this one is the original. This is a game that goes unnoticed by a lot of people. It's still active today, and not only that, it even got a remake. Let's talk about Ninth Dawn Remake, Nimio. You explore the continent of Montelorne where an evil force is beginning to awaken. Your main mission is to investigate this mystery, but the game gives you a huge amount of freedom to explore the world at your own pace. The game offers plenty of different options. You can explore towns and dungeons, accept side quests, and defeat powerful bosses. The entire world is handcrafted and features more than 45 dungeons, each with its own enemies, bosses, and puzzles. A lot of people end up skipping this game because of its graphics, but trust me, this one deserves a lot more attention. That type of game where you just play to defeat monsters. Let's talk about a very forgotten game on the Play Store called ABYSSBLADE. Honestly, I really like the game's graphics and I love isometric visuals, especially in this more cartoon style. The game has 3 different classes, and after that you can further customize and evolve your character. Then you enter dungeons and go as far as you can, trying to level up your character, collect items, and earn a lot of money. The game doesn't have a big story mode either, but it's one of those extremely addictive games where you can spend the whole day defeating monsters and seeing how far your character can go. I was taking a good look at this game and it really reminded me of Zelda, so I did some research and it seems like they really just transformed the result into this game. Let's talk about AIROHEART. In this game, you play as a character who needs to defeat his own brother because inside the game you are the strongest one, but your brother is also powerful and of course he ends up choosing the path of evil. Unlike many others on this list, this one is much more focused on adventure and RPG elements. You'll solve a lot of puzzles, talk with NPCs, and discover the entire story about you and your brother, which involves a lot of drama. At the same time, you'll also have to defeat every type of enemy that stands in your way. It's a good game, but at the same time, it's a very simple experience. In this game, you're searching for the legendary Holy Sword, and the best part is the freedom it gives you to do that. Let's talk about Angel Sword. Another very old game from around 2012 or 2013 that's still available on the Play Store today, which is really impressive. In the game, you create your own character who's basically a mix between a human and a demon, and your goal is to find this sword. Other than that, it's a fairly linear game. It gives you plenty of freedom to explore every area, but there is still a story to follow, and this is another game where I really have to praise the graphics. They look great, especially considering how old the game is. This is the kind of RPG that would probably be much more successful if it were released today. Another older RPG that many people end up forgetting is available on the Play Store. Let's talk about the legendary ANIMA RPG. This is a game that really stands out and can be a great choice for anyone who enjoys the famous dungeon crawler style. The game has this mechanic and it was probably one of the first Android games to bring this type of experience to the platform. If I remember correctly, the game has 4 different classes where you can level up your character all the way to level 100. And of course, as you progress, you unlock different abilities and attributes to customize your character and build it however you want. From what I remember, the game doesn't really have much of a story. It's mostly about defeating demons and leveling up your character. And that's it for today's list. These are some of the most underrated RPGs you can find on Android, and many of them are hidden gems that deserve much more attention. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more hidden games. See you in the next one.